Warning, this content is for entertainment and educational purposes only. This video is brought to you by First Detachment Nutrition. Battle tested, expert formulated. Use discount code AB10 at checkout for 10% off. All right, folks, Big Paul here today, and I'm going to walk you through my middle-age transformation, how I went from a dad bod to a national level bodybuilding competitor. And I did it in about a 5-year period of time. And how I put on 55 pounds of stage weight from my first show back in 2021 to my national show this past year in 2023. I went from being a fourth place finisher at a local show to being a competitor for a pro card, winning my weight class in the super heavyweight division and coming in the final grouping for the finals for a pro card and just missing a pro card in just a couple of years. I'm going to walk you through all that in just 1 second. I was an avid bodybuilder in my 20s. I would say a gym bodybuilder. I was a fan. I had a bunch of false starts. I was a perma-bulker. I loved bodybuilding. I fancied myself a bodybuilder, but I only half committed to the bodybuilding lifestyle, I would say. And I started lifting when I was about 18, and it was off and on lifting pretty consistently up until about age 32, when I had kids, got involved in a business venture, had a bunch of changes in my life, got married, all this stuff, and I had a bunch of injuries. So I walked away from the gym. I did not touch a weight for 12 years. Came off cold turkey from PEDs. Didn't use any PEDs from 32 to 44, I think, roughly. I was completely off of everything, and I turned into a dad bod. I went through this amazing transformation where I lost weight and got fatter at the same time. It was pretty fantastic. So I looked pretty awful. You could see, I have pictures up of it, but you could see how I looked. It was pretty terrible. But at 44, thereabouts, I guess somewhere around there, I was going through a divorce, and I decided I wanted to get back in the gym and get in shape. I really missed the gym. I sort of had the urge to get back into bodybuilding again. At that time, I just wanted to get in shape, so I looked good for the ladies since I was going to be single. And I really didn't have aspirations of being a bodybuilder again. But I thought, as I started getting back in shape, maybe it'd be cool just to do a show, just to get that out there, challenge myself, have a goal to work towards. I always like having a goal to work towards in my life, in my 40s. So I challenged myself to do a bodybuilding show. As far as cycles go, when I got back into the gym, I just was on TRT. Nothing crazy. I maybe sprinkled a little Anavar in here and there, but it was like something like 200 milligrams of testosterone and like 2 units of growth hormone. I wasn't even doing growth hormone at first. It was just testosterone. So the first year or so back in the gym, it was mainly just TRT. Then I started working with Dr. Todd, and we pushed doses up a little bit. Dr. Todd had me doing some nandrolone-only stuff, which in hindsight I didn't really like. I went back to doing just testosterone-based cycles, but we did some nandrolone-only stuff, and Todd really got the fat off of me. He got me leaned up, got me looking decent. And then in 2020, I decided that I was going to do a bodybuilding show. I'm like, heck, I'm going to do it. And I started prepping for a bodybuilding show. And we all know what happened in 2020. The lockdowns happened. So I got about halfway through a prep. My show got canceled. And it's just like, fuck. So I stopped my prep. But I kept working out. I kept continuing to get into shape. And that really put a nail in that coffin of doing a bodybuilding show again. So I wasn't sure that I was really going to do anything after that. But that sort of ruined everything for me. And I had some surgeries along the way too, like a bunch of injuries happened. I had to have my ACL replaced from playing basketball. I tore my ACL. I also had to have my lymph nodes in my neck removed. I had a tumor in my salivary gland. Thank God turned out to be benign, but they weren't sure if it was cancer or not. And so they took my salivary gland and all my lymph nodes in my neck out because of that. And in 2021, I decided, all right, I'm going to give another crack at doing a show. And I connected up with Justin Harris at that time. Justin was going to prep me for my show. So I decided to do the Jay Cutler Classic in 2022, around the time that the lockdowns were starting to, I'm sorry, not 2022, 2021. Around the time that the lockdowns are starting to end. I got myself ready for the Jay Cutler Classic in 2021. And I really pushed myself hard. Way too hard during the Jay Cutler Classic. I'm one of those guys, if I'm going to do something, you tell me to eat 4 ounces of chicken, I'm going to eat 5. If you tell me I need to do 30 minutes of cardio, I'm going to do 50 minutes of cardio. I go extreme on everything, and I probably pushed myself too hard on that contest prep, and I severely over-dieted. Not that I had a ton of muscle after I came back. I wasn't that huge at that point. We just did a basic contest prep with the drugs. It wasn't anything crazy. I think it was Taskmasteron, your typical stuff. A little bit of tren in there. Just typical contest prep stuff. But I severely over-dieted, and I got down to 185 pounds. And I'm almost 6'2". I'm almost 6 foot 2 inches tall. And I think when I started my prep, I don't remember where I was at, but I was a little chunky, probably 240 pounds, something like that. But my body just kind of likes to be around 220, 215, 220. That's where my body likes to hang out. That's kind of where my homeostatic point is, I would say. And man, I looked like shit after that show. But what that did, I was over depleted, I was over dieted, and what that did was set me up for a crazy freaking rebound. The one thing I learned from Justin Harris, Justin is very aggressive with food coming out of shows. Most people and most coaches do these reverse diets where they slowly start pushing the food back up. They pull all the drugs out, which in my opinion is probably the dumbest thing you fucking do coming out of a show. People are going to be starved. People are going to be hungry. If you pull all the drugs out, you're setting yourself up for a hormonal crash. To be in an estrogen dominant environment, you're going to set yourself up for a crash in your metabolism. So probably the smarter approach coming out of a show is just to bump your food up, eat a bunch of clean food because you're going to be hungry anyway. I've always found when you try to reverse diet people, they just end up cheating. They just end up cheating and binging on crappy food. So why not keep them full on good food? So that's what Justin and I did. I ate a shit ton of good food. A lot of just plain old meat and rice, steak and rice, chicken and rice, that type of stuff coming out of the show. Nothing crazy. And I ate a crap ton of food, crap ton of carbs. I ran insulin. I think my cycle coming out of the show was very, very basic. It was testosterone and a little bit of NPP. Very low doses. I think I ran like 500 milligrams of testosterone and something like 50 milligrams of NPP every other day. I don't recall exactly. Ran some growth hormone and then did the insulin. Did that for about 8 weeks, and I put on something like 50 or 60 pounds in an 8-week period of time. It was insane. And I stayed very lean. And that set me up for the offseason. That rebound and that time of getting super depleted really set me up for the rebound. Now, I'm not saying that that's going to work for everybody. I've seen it work for some people. I've seen it not work for other people. But if you get yourself super depleted, you are priming the pump. Your insulin sensitivity is going to be high. I speculate that myostatin might be lower. Who knows? This is just me speculating. That could be just a bunch of trash. I don't know. I'm just speculating here. Gastric emptying is going to be at an all-time high. Appetite is going to be great. Your sensitivity to the drugs is going to be super high. So why not take advantage of that period of time and push things hard? And that's sort of what we did. We went very aggressive post-show, ton of food, kept the drugs to a minimum, used some insulin. I didn't go crazy with the insulin. And I had this rapid phase of growth at, I'm trying to think, what was that, 47 at the time? people say you can't gain weight at that age. All right, folks, I want to take a quick break from this episode to tell you about the new e-course that Kurt Havens and I have put together, The Scientific Principles of Anabolics and PEDs. This is the most comprehensive PED e-course ever put together, with over 80 modules, including intros to PEDs, major steroid profiles, competitor off-season cycles, non-competitor cycles, contest prep cycles, HGH fundamentals, insulin fundamentals, side effect management, safer use concepts, fat loss agents, estrogen management, and advanced PED and hypertrophy science. It is the best course out there of its kind. Go check it out. Link is in the video description below. Now, what I did that might be a little bit different is I had to completely change up my training. I was more of a HIIT trainer when I was younger. I know people get very upset when they hear me talk about HIIT training and how it has some limitations, especially as you get older. And they say, well, you've never tried it. I was a HIIT advocate. I did HIIT for many, many, many years. And yes, HIIT can work. But here's the problem when you get older. Here's the problem with HIIT style training. For that low volume, high intensity style training, you have to push the weights. You have to use high weights. You used to have to use compound movements. You can see somebody like Dorian Yates would be an example. And what happens when you get older that I found is that your connective tissue and your muscles just can't stand up to that beating that you take with a high intensity style training. And this is what happened to me when I came back and I tried to train that way. I just kept getting hurt. I got hurt. I kept having these muscle tears. I kept having little injuries. I could not train that way anymore. And I'm like, God damn, what am I going to do? Like, I'm not going to progress if I don't go to absolute failure or push beyond failure, or if I'm not doing squats, deadlifts, bench presses. And I stumbled into Mike Israetel and his training, or the RP training, read through his book, The Scientific Principles of Hypertrophy. And I thought to myself, God damn, this makes a lot of sense. So I am going to pull back, do a little more volume, stay away from injury risk prone exercises, look at the cost versus benefit of an exercise, the stimulus to fatigue ratio, all that stuff with exercises. Do I really need to bench press anymore? Do I really need to do barbell squats anymore with heavy weights? Do I really need to do heavy barbell bench presses? And I thought to myself, probably not. I'm going to give it a try because I can't keep sustaining the thing that I was, the way I was training before. I can't keep doing this. I'm going to get hurt. So I subbed all that stuff out for higher stimulus, lower injury risk, lower fatigue exercises. So for example, I swapped out squats, barbell squats for hack squats. I swapped out barbell bench presses for machine plate presses. I swapped out deadlifts in just like with things like cable stiff-legged deadlifts and things like that. I stopped doing heavy barbell deadlifts, got rid of all of that shit, heavy barbell rows, things like that. Stuck with more machines, more dumbbells, did more volume, and I pulled back from training to failure. I have not trained to failure right now, probably in 3 to 4 years, something like that. And I had the best progress of my life. So clearly, training to failure wasn't the secret, and using barbell presses and doing heavy weights wasn't the secret to growing, because I've had the best growth of my life. I'm not saying that you can't grow that way. You certainly can. But if you take an objective look at it and look at guys like Ronnie Coleman, Dorian Yates, all of these guys that did this heavy, high-intensity style of training, they all end up injured. And they all end up having to stop training at some point. Now, it can work, but if you want to continue to progress into your 40s, into your 50s, you can't possibly continue to train that way. So that was a big, big, big change that I made. And also, a thing that I changed as well is my diet. I went with a lower fat, higher carbohydrate, moderate protein diet. I used to eat way more fat, and all the fat did was make me fat. And I thought about it, the role of fat in muscle building. You do need some EFAs, We know that your body is not going to make essential fatty acids on its own. You need some fats, but you don't need a ton. When you're eating a ton of saturated fats, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense because saturated fats serve very little purpose in muscle building. And you're also increasing the risk of cardiovascular disease while taking PEDs with lipid skewing, eating a lot of saturated fat. So it made more sense when you put all these pieces of the puzzle together. So you have higher volume training, higher frequency training with a higher carbohydrate, low fat diet with insulin use, moderate insulin use with the growth hormone and intelligent PED use, and they all sort of line up together to make a perfect environment for growing for a guy that's a little bit older. And that's what I found. And I exploded when I started doing things that way. I had to figure out how to train around injuries. I had to figure out how to eat around stomach issues. I had to completely reinvent and rethink things to continue progressing at my age. And I would say that was the biggest takeaway that I can, if people ask me what was the secret from growing from the one show to the next, was that. And I'll give you another example. 2022, when I competed in the DC Pro-Am, that is when I had the biggest weight jump. I think something like 48 pounds or something. I really didn't jump that much, or maybe it was 50, I don't remember. I really didn't jump that much between my 2022 show and my national show, but my physique changed radically. I had a lot more density. My physique was a higher quality this past year, and I had one of my worst off seasons ever. I got hurt. I had a labrum tear from doing stupid shit. I was a dumbass, and I did weighted pull-ups. There's no reason for me to be doing weighted pull-ups. Stupid. Just fucking stupid. And I tried also doing some incline barbell presses again. Got hurt. First time when I didn't stick to the principles. So I ended up having like a 4-month stretch this past off season where I really couldn't train shoulders or chest with any sort of intensity. I had to sort of work around it. There was months where I couldn't do shoulder presses. I was just doing lateral raises. And I have pretty massive shoulders, I would say. I mean, you could see the results from this past year, what I looked like versus where I was at in 2022. It was pretty dramatic difference in quality of physique. And I really had a shit off season. Now with the PEDs, I pushed the PEDs higher this year than what I have before. But what I found with the PEDs, this is another thing, like guys think you need to take all sorts of exotic PEDs to grow. You need exotic PEDs to facilitate growth, especially as you get older. That's what people think, but nothing could be further from the truth. I kept things really basic. The primary thing that I ran for my PED stack pretty much year-round was testosterone, primobolan. Once in a blue moon, I'd sprinkle in a little NPP, but after a while, I got to the point where I was having panic attacks and anxiety from the NPP, so I dropped that completely. So basically, just test, primo, GH, and a little bit of insulin. That's it. Now, we pushed the doses up this past year. I think I maxed out. I don't know. I got up to like where I was over a gram of test and like around a gram of primobolan. I briefly got up to 1,500 milligrams of test, but I couldn't handle it, so I had to pull it back down to about a gram. And that's where I ended up at. And in contest prep, it's just, you do a little more stuff. My theory here is to not run toxic shit. If you are feeling sick, if your stomach's upset, you can't eat, if you're feeling lethargic, you're not going to be able to train hard. You're not going to be able to eat. You're not going to be able to do the things that facilitate growth. You're not going to be able to sleep. So I stay away from Tren. I stay away from orals for the most part. Once in a blue moon, I'll run some Anavar. But for the most part, it's clean, easy stuff that's easy on my system. Keep the side effects at bay. And my blood work looks great on that stuff. It's when you start running Tren. It's when you start running DHB, when you start running Mint, when you start taking D-ball, when you start taking Anadrol all the time, that your blood work starts to look like shit. When you're eating a high fat diet and you're eating a crap diet, you're drinking alcohol, you're doing stupid shit like that, that's when your blood work goes to shit. I found if I keep my diet clean, if I do some cardio, if I stick to testosterone and primobolan as my base anabolics with some growth hormone, my blood work looks good, I feel good. I was able to train hard and I was able to grow. That's really it. That's really it at the end of the day. And I will tell you this, the discipline with the diet, for me, the diet is the most important part. Everybody thinks it's the PEDs, and I'm not saying the PEDs don't work. They certainly do. They certainly help a lot. But the diet for me is the most important part. I treat my off seasons like a contest prep. I weigh and measure everything. I stick to good, clean, simple foods, chicken, beef, rice, potatoes, some vegetables here and there, some fruit here and there. That's it. Really simple. Supplement in some EFAs from olive oil, nuts, nut butters, avocados. That's it. Occasionally have a piece of fish. That's it. Very simple, very basic diet. Now, I've been eating like shit since I've gotten off contest prep, but I'll get back into the swing of it. But when you have to commit to your off season like a contest prep, weigh and measure everything, eat good, clean, whole foods. Be patient. A lot of guys expect these immediate returns and growth from doing things. It just takes time. You can't see the progress from day to day. It's hard to see the progress from week to week. Sometimes it's even hard to see it from month to month. I really was disappointed coming into this last contest prep because I thought I had a wasted off season. I felt like I didn't make any progress. But then as contest prep progressed and I got leaner, and I started stripping down the fat, and I noticed, wow, my physique looks way better than it did last year when I thought I had a shitty offseason. But you know what I didn't do this offseason? I didn't give up. I didn't stop training because I had an injury. I worked my way around it. I didn't stop my diet because things weren't progressing the way I thought they should. I stuck to my diet. I kept the PEDs simple. I didn't crank up doses unnecessarily. I didn't switch to weird compounds thinking that would get me over the hump. I just stayed the course. I stayed patient. I kept things simple. I stayed consistent and I worked every day. And that's what got me these results. Really, it's really that simple. I do think the rebound played a huge role in it. The rebound is a very powerful tool if you understand how to leverage it properly. It's very nuanced, I'll say this. There's a fine line you have to walk, and I've seen it with my clients, where sometimes people just get fat. So you have to be really careful how you plan it. But the rebound does work. I think the strategy that most coaches use post-show, or most people use post-show, of reverse dieting and pulling out the PEDs, in most instances is not the smart approach. Now, sometimes it's necessary if you have somebody that's in a very bad state, they don't feel good after a show, they're pretty toxic, or you think they might have a rapid fat gain, then maybe it's warranted. Once again, everything's subjective. You have to approach each situation differently because everybody is unique in how their body responds. So you have to sort of watch the body and see what it does. All right, folks, that's all I've got on this one. Please go check out my Anabolics in PED e-course. Link is in the video description below. It is the most comprehensive e-course on PEDs out there. If you need help with your programming and rebounding and getting yourself in shape, I also do coaching. Hit me up for coaching. Thank you for watching.